Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Teen Talk podcast. Today, not only am I here with a very special guest of mine, but a very special friend of mine. So, welcome, Sukayna.
Thank you, Abir. Thank you for having me.
We've honestly been planning this episode for 3 months now. How many times has this been postponed?
Yeah, I had to look through my busy calendar and my business meetings, and I'm like, oh my God, when do I take? No, I'm joking. No, it's been a crazy end of 2023. And you know what? I strongly believe that everything happens at the right time. So this is the perfect time that we are recording this.
Absolutely. So, today's topic is honestly something I love talking about, and it's a very, very interesting topic. It's about finding the right people in your life and sticking to them. So, why this is important is because in every stage of your life, whether you're in school, whether you're in university, whether you're at work, you're gonna make friendships and you're gonna sometimes not meet very good people. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about toxic friendships. So, my first question to you is, what is your definition of a toxic friend? Because everyone has a different definition according to their personal experiences. So, I want to know your definition, and how do you set boundaries with people that you've just met? Because a lot of people, I'm not gonna blame them, but they pour when they just meet someone like immediately. And I don't blame them, but they regret it a lot later. So that's my question to you.
To start off with, I would say before we even jump into the definition, I would say that friends make you or break you. And that's something I strongly believe in. Now, if you asked me this question years ago, that how would you define a toxic friendship? I would say yada, 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 this is what it is. But honestly, over the years, my perspective of looking at people, looking at friendships, looking at bonds, relationships has changed. And I wouldn't label it as toxic, but rather some people are just not the right company for you, or some people are just lost souls. I think that's a more softer way to define it rather than say like hardcore label people as toxic. Because at the end of the day, no human being is perfect, and everyone has their baggage of flaws and imperfections and traumas, and they reflect that, right? With the people they meet, depending on how healed they are as individuals. But to give it a definition, my definition would be number one is that a friend who you don't really, who you feel is perhaps a lost soul or not the right one for you, perhaps is one who brings you down in a sense that they drain your energy rather than, uplift you or give you more energy. Again, if you asked me the same question years ago, I wouldn't even talk about energy. I'd be like, oh, they make you feel terrible and they're horrible. And, but the beauty of life is that as you go on and you meet different individuals and you interact with them, you become, you begin to empathize and understand them more, which is crucial. So someone who, for example, me, I'm a 23-year-old woman. I now set boundaries, and that's something I'm sure we will touch upon later on. But I first see that, okay, what kind of energy am I getting from this person? And you kind of get that feeling when you meet them for the first time, or if you aren't able to, like, if you're not really sure about what your gut is telling you or your instinct or the energy you're getting from them, maybe it's spending a little more time will make you understand how they are as individuals. That's one. Another thing is that you feel as though this person is taking you farther away from God. Now, everyone's definition can be different in a sense that the way they view friendships and how they go about with life can be completely different. But I strongly believe that spirituality plays a gigantic role in our lives. And our purpose in this world is to reach our highest potential and to connect with God in this journey. So I think that a person who perhaps is not good for you or is a lost soul would perhaps take you farther away from God. And the whole idea of this life that we have is to connect back with our origin, which is God, regardless of the religion you're in. And another thing is that, and we can discuss this again later on, in regards to how friendships change depending on how old you are. So for example, as a teenager, I had a different viewpoint. Now in my 20s, I have a different viewpoint, and how you navigate through that. So I think we can settle it there in terms of definition. But could you remind me of what you asked, the second question that you asked?
It's about setting boundaries with people you've just met.
Right. So boundaries are extremely important. And in all honesty, that is something I did not have. I think growing up, I just wanted to feel validated. I wanted to have a connection, and I would just jump on any sort of connection, any sort of friend that I'd come across that I could just latch onto, for lack of a better term, and sprout that friendship and make it grow. But as I grew up, I realized that boundaries are extremely important, especially in your 20s, because then you enter the work life and you're busy. And I've noticed this even with my friends, like for example, my uni friends who I was very much connected to during my uni life. As we've been navigating through our 20s, we don't talk every single day, to be very frank. And in fact, we might even go months without talking. But whenever we do catch up or we meet or speak on call, it's like things are still the same. And we respect the space that we give each other. We respect that we have our own lives. And there's not that pettiness that, for example, I had back in high school that, oh my God, you didn't text me. And like, because then you understand that you're so busy in your life and you have your commitments and responsibilities, and so do they. But to really answer your question in terms of setting boundaries, right? Sometimes when we meet people, and we really crave a connection or whatever it may be, and this was me in like high school, we tend to like overlook things just so that we can save that connection and feel that validation. And that is why throughout my healing journey, I've come to understand that like validation is something that we get from within ourselves. And that's really important, because the more we feel, so we make ourselves like we are our own safe space, the more we spend time with ourselves, understanding ourselves and who we are, it impacts everything in our life, from our relationships, from our personal life to professional life. And it really helps us get through life then, because then we validate our own selves. Then it's not easy. It takes years and it takes dedication. Sometimes when we meet people, and especially in our teenage years, or even when we enter university, people, again, they want to have that connection and they just pour out anything and everything. This is something I struggled with, where I felt like I just would connect with someone and like in a few days they're my BFF. And I'm like, oh my God, like we're gonna be like neighbors and our kids are gonna get married and we're gonna be connected forever. And I remember like these were the conversations I used to have with my friends in high school. If you ask me right now where those people are, I don't even know where they are, to be very honest. I hope they're well and safe and happy and growing, but I don't even know where they are, I'm not even connected with a lot of them. So it's important that we work on our inner self and our healing and spending time with ourselves, no matter how uncomfortable it is, because then we won't, even though connection is important and that is a human need, right? We will not be exactly pouring out our entire life and our story literally the first day we've met someone or the second day. Now, for example, we meet someone in university or in school, and they're like that, they pour everything into you, whatever, and it gets overwhelming. It's more than okay to communicate that. And communication, oh my God, I cannot stress how important it is in any relationship, whether it's in your family, with your parents, your siblings, your partner, your friends. Communication and transparency is key. And you just have to hope that the person who is receiving this information from you is open-minded and mature about it. So, and you know what? A lot of times people aren't. A lot of times I remember there were people, for example, where I was like, hey, because they would be like, oh, you don't speak to me anymore and everything. And I'm like, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but I can tell that, we've just drifted apart and maybe we're not on the same level in terms of like I could tell that this is not the friendship I'd want to continue. So I would either like without telling them, I would just like slowly distance myself and they would either pick it up. Or if they were to say that, you don't speak to me anymore and everything, and be like, yeah, I'm sorry. I've just been focusing on myself and my life. And, I value the friendship that we had, but I feel like we both are changing as individuals, and that's okay. That's growth. So communication is absolute key. And then setting boundaries in terms of like a person who you realize is actually not good for you. And you meet them and you're like, oh, okay, all good. It's all fun and games. And you guys are good friends. And you're like, wait, this person's not really good for me. Their energy is like draining me, or they're just taking me farther away from God, or from like discovering or working on my healing or my growth. And yeah, I would go back to either distance yourself or just have a conversation and be like, I really don't want to hurt your feelings. But and it's a very difficult conversation to have. So honestly, hats off to anyone who does. That's really brave. But telling them, just being clear with your thoughts and how you feel, and hopefully they will respect that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to go back to the point where you said that a toxic person, first of all, thank you for correcting me on not using that word. That means a
Oh
lot.
no. So see, it's not about correction. How I would say it, it's honestly like life and everything about life is black and white. I mean, it's not black and white, it's gray. Everyone has their own definitions. And I think over time we learn and we change. So we may not have the same viewpoints, and that's okay. But what matters is how we navigate and look at life and how we grow, and that's how we change our perspectives. So it's not like, oh my God, like you're wrong. No, it's just that, you know what? I once upon a time, that's how I would label it too. So it's okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to highlight on one point where you said that a good company is where they push you away from God. And I just want to say that when I had distanced myself from some of the most, like the worst company that I had, I just felt I got so much closer to God. And there's a correlation, and that's so crazy. Like it's just every time you distance yourself from bad company, you find God, and then you're like, wow, I like this plan of God much better rather than being with those people.
It's true, because like I said at the very start, friendships either make you or break you. And this is something I was speaking to my sister just, I believe, last night. And we were talking about how as much as the upbringing of a person is important in the person like they are becoming, but the company that they have plays a gigantic role in the person they are becoming. So a person can have, a great upbringing and, have parents that were emotionally available, and but they could enter a really bad crowd and that could completely change them, because friends really influence you and the person you become. So I would say that, just be very careful about your company and who you surround yourself with, because your friends, the people you have around you, determine, for example, like as in who you are. So people will look at your friends and be like, oh, okay, so this is kind of how she is, because their influence is so great. And it's like it's easy to have this as a conversation as a 20-year-old now, but I honestly really struggled with my friendships to a point that it would honestly break me, especially with the friends that I felt were my everything, but then next thing you know, they either betray you or they distance yourself, and then you start doubting yourself and you're like, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? Like, what is it? And then you realize over time that, what, sometimes it's good. It's good that, people distance themselves from you. And there's something that someone told me once, that rejection is God's protection and redirection. And
Yeah.
sometimes, especially when in your spiritual journey and you're changing and you've become very focused on your moral values and your spirituality, the people who you used to vibe with, maybe for them it's like, oh, like they just, because they're different people now, you're a different person, you guys don't exactly vibe. And you know what, that's completely okay, because that is growth. Especially when you're working on your spiritual journey, people then tend to distance themselves from you, but that's all right, because that is allowing you, giving space for you to bump into other souls, other people, and it's giving you even more opportunities to grow and focus more on yourself. In fact, I'd like to share a hadith by Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and he says that two believers together are brothers, as if they are united in one body. And if one of them complained about some pain he was feeling, his brother will find that pain within his own self. Both of their souls are from one soul, and the soul of the believer is connected to the Spirit of God with such intensity that is more intense than the connection that sun rays have with the sun itself. And I think it's a really powerful hadith quote by this very spiritual individual who was directly connected, right, to the Prophet, that it sort of tells us that that's kind of how our friendships should be. And in a sense that, for example, if I'm going through a tough time and my best friend knows about it, she will empathize with me and try to understand where she sort of feels my pain too, and she wants to help me in that, and vice versa. And my happiness is her happiness. My pain is her pain. My sadness is her sadness. And that's how friendships strengthen. But I do want to point out that as much as obviously we should be there for our friends through thick and thin, we should not allow their problems to consume us. So in a sense that, to the point that it starts like affecting our physical and mental health. Yes, we can, empathize with them and try to step in their shoes and, feel what they feel and be like, hey, I'm here for you, and I can feel the pain that you're feeling, right? But again, it's that we should we should not let their problems consume us and that we feel overwhelmed. I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said about distancing yourself from certain people, and that's honestly really brave. But there's certain people out there who know that their friends are toxic. Sorry for that. Who
No,
know
no,
that
you don't have to apologize. You don't. That's okay.
people out there who know that, okay, maybe I'm not in the right company and I should change my friend group, but they have a fear that, oh, they're probably not going to find any more friends, they're going to be lonely. And that's something I went through. I remember when I stopped talking to my friends, which were a lot of people, because we were an entire friend group. We were around like everyone was connected. So if you stop talking to one person, your relationship with the other person also is not the same anymore. So I think I stopped talking to like 6, 7, 8 people, and those were like my only friends, right? So at times when I would go to school, it honestly felt like a task. I had to push myself out of bed. And when I would go to school, a lot of times I would get made fun of. People would laugh at me, and even like, I don't know, call me names or stuff, but just because I stopped talking to them. And honestly, I had to, it was tough, but there are still people today, I believe, who have that fear that they don't want to be with this friend group, but that fear of loneliness, that fear of, oh, I'm not going to find another friend group, is stopping them. What would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
First thing is that whatever you're feeling is completely valid. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you with having that fear. I had the same thing when I was transitioning from school to university to the work world, where I was like, especially from school to university, I realized that I need to start distancing myself from people. And I was like, you know what? It's just so scary because it's like you sort of have to start over, and change is so scary. But if there's anything I can say now is that loneliness teaches you a lot. And when you're distancing yourself, number one, that's the bravest thing to do because not everyone can do that. You know, some people feel like they have to stay in a friendship just because they are so scared of facing the fear of being alone that they're not comfortable with the, you know, with being alone, which is, again, it goes back to working on yourself and creating that safe space that you can be alone, but you're not lonely. And that's something
Yeah.
that takes time. But I would say that negative experiences, especially like with friendships, they really help us grow. So we shouldn't feel like, oh my God, why am I going through this? Maybe it's these low moments that are just allowing you, like prepping you to break through and actually, you know, work on reaching your highest. So it's scary, but I would say take the leap of faith, and it's not going to be easy. You will have to, then you will feel a little alone because, you know, you're not used to being alone. Your friends are always there. But the best thing a person can do is choose themselves and do the right thing. And that is the bravest thing a person can do in the world we live in, where we try, where people try to be like others. They put these multiple masks on. The bravest thing you can do is be your authentic self and do what is best for you. Even if that means you have to go through lonely nights, even if that means you have to cry yourself to sleep, even if that means that you can't get up the next morning, but you push yourself to get up out of that bed, that is honestly like, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of bravery. And people who are going through that or have been through that, like, I applaud you. I really do. Because I've been there, and I think all of us at some point have been there. But understand that this loneliness will just allow you to connect with yourself. Understand, the most importantly, it'll make you realize that there is no one in the world you can depend on except God, the entity Allah. I mean, God, whichever God you believe in, like mine is Allah, yours is Allah, but whoever is listening, whichever religion you're in, make God your best friend. And I know saying this is easy, but the more you begin to learn about yourself and connect with the higher power, the easier it is to get through life, the less dependent you are on people. And if anything, if people say things to you, if people abandon you, whatever the case may be, you know that God is there, and that is enough. And it's not something that you wake up and you're like, oh, okay, God's my best friend, I feel great. It's a journey. And that's the beauty of life. You know, it takes time, but then you get there, you know, one step at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree because um currently I'm reading this book. It's called Good Vibes, Good Life. And the first half of the book he's talking about positive lifestyle habits, and the second thing he says is to surround yourself with positive people. Like he could have said probably work on your physical fitness or work on this or work on that, but the second thing he said was was about the people around you. And I think that's so important because you could be physically fit, you could be taking care of yourself. But if you're surrounding yourself with people who are not really the people you want to be around, then you're not really healthy, is what he's trying to say.
So I'm really glad that you brought up the whole it's important to surround yourself with positive people. And that just reminded me that, as mentioned before, your friends make you who you are, right? And over the years, I've realized that the more I surround myself with people, for example, who are spiritual, who like intellectual talks, it began to make it helped me grow as an individual. Especially, I like surrounding myself with people who have different point of views, different perspectives, which really opened my mind to things, right? Because you don't exactly grow when you're around people who have the same exact opinion of you. But then again, it depends on a lot of factors. Maybe that person can have completely different viewpoints on like everything. So again, is that a friendship you want to keep? I watched a video the other day, and it's about a man who shared his um story with his childhood friend, and how they grew up and they were each other's safe space, and they were very much connected. But as they grew as individuals, and this is a grown man now, he's probably in his 40s. He was like, we began to realize that as we were growing and changing as individuals, our opinions obviously were not the same. And it came to the point that there were so many things that we disagreed on, that we would just end up arguing on anything and everything. I mean, even if they were to have, for example, a civil conversation or whatever, you would want to have a friendship where there's some sort of connection or base. But if you see that, oh my God, we're literally like, we don't like, our lifestyles are different, how our moral values are different. And like once upon a time, it was the same, maybe when we were kids or teenagers, but now it's not. And you know what? He said that's okay. Because as individuals, we grow and we become the person, we choose to be, and we can have different opinions, we can agree to disagree. Doesn't mean we have to cut them off from our life and be like, oh my God, I don't want to be connected with you. No, like, you can still be connected to them, but have that distance, and you can have your own lives. They don't have to be a part of every single thing of your life like they were before. And that's a really important yet difficult thing that I had to learn, because there were a lot of people that I was connected to for quite some time. And I really had to sit down with myself and my thoughts and be like, people can change. People are not going to be the way you want them to be, all because your energies matched, or your moral values or whatever matched once upon a time, doesn't mean they're not going to change. And you can't make people the way you want them to be. That's just how it is. So I realized that, you know what, we can still be connected or end on good terms. And, whatever, if we ever bump into each other in life or catch up, like, we could just generally catch up, but we don't have to be as connected as we were before. And that's okay. And that's probably one of the hardest pills I've had to swallow in the past few years. But that has allowed me and changed my perspective as how I view people. Because it's like, you know what? No one is for you, in a sense that everyone is their own person. And the best thing you can do is work on yourself and grow yourself, and connect with like-minded people. And most importantly, strengthen your connection with God, so you are able to get through life. Because when we don't connect with the higher power, and we don't give that a priority, we begin to run after this world and its people to satisfy whatever we feel. And that is when people try to, distract themselves in different ways, which can be extremely unhealthy. They're very extreme things that people can get into, and they're not so extreme things that people can get into. I can give examples, like, for example, maybe, I don't know, someone can get into drugs and alcohol to escape their reality, to escape loneliness. And then maybe not such an extreme case would be someone overeating to the point that it's literally killing them because of their weight. So that's not extreme, but it's unhealthy. So we need to start finding healthy ways to go about with our life. And that can be found by spending more time with ourselves, journaling, deep breathing, meditating. I know these are things like we hear all the time in all these well-being sessions and stuff, but honestly, consistency and dedication towards these things will change your life. Even if you just spend 5 minutes every day, um, deep breathing, 5 minutes every day with positive affirmations. Whatever you tell yourself again and again and again, it becomes your reality. It is what you believe, right? So all these things, they take effort. Honestly, I've known these things for years. Everyone knows these things. They're very basic stuff. But to actually do it takes a lot of effort. And I remember someone telling me this, that putting yourself first and actually seeking help in a way to understand yourself better, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through meditation, journaling, all these things that you do, to it just shows how much compassion and love you have for yourself, because it takes a lot to do that. It really does. And it just shows how much you care about your own self and your well-being, that you are able to take out time, a little bit of time every day or once a week, where you spend time with yourself, understanding yourself better, painting, reading, doing whatever, some time, alone time, to really work on yourself and your healing. And that itself will transform your life. You'll be able to understand and empathize and heal your inner child. You will be able to break internal beliefs that have, that have come about because of, your childhood and your surroundings and school, whatever it may be. Like very common ones, like I'm not good enough, the fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, all these things. All of these things can be removed if we work on ourselves and our healing. And it takes dedication and time, but it's something that is worth it. And our older versions of ourselves, our future selves, will thank us, and even our kids will thank us, because we all know that generational trauma passes down. And it always passes down unless someone breaks the cycle, someone breaks the chain. And we are the generation that's going to do that, because we're so much more aware with psychology. There's emphasis on mental health now. And the more we focus on that and on our healing, we will literally not just transform ourselves, but step by step help in transforming the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other day, coming back to what you said about working on yourself, the other day I came across this line which was so inspiring. It was like, if you can work 8 hours for someone else, you can definitely work for yourself for at least an hour or even 2 hours, but at least an hour. And coming back to journaling, I think journaling has was something that I recently started, and it was something my therapist told me to really emphasize more on where I don't even have journaling prompts, like any questions on what is your expectation from today, just normal journaling, like even if it's a line. She told me, even if it's just a line, just start. Like, if today was a bad day, just write down today was a bad day. If today was
Yeah.
a good day, just write down something about it. And I think that has changed my life so much, where previously I used to react to situations, but now I respond because of
That's
journaling, because it has helped me calm down so much and let me understand my feelings. So whatever I've been through today, I just write it in my journal and I understand, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad, maybe it was how I reacted. So yeah, that was something I really appreciate you talking about journaling. So yeah.
I think it's incredible that you even mentioned about therapy and how your therapist is guiding you. And I think in the world we live in, where society tends to judge on every little thing, I think it's really brave. Even though honestly, this should be normalized by now. We shouldn't be like
Yeah.
judging people when they go to therapy. It's the 21st century. It's 2024, guys. Get it together. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I've been going for therapy since 2021, and it's been years now. So like not too long, but long enough. But it has been such a beautiful experience. It has changed me so much as an individual. I think the idea people have of therapy is so skewed in a sense that people think that, oh, you have to be completely mentally unstable or insane to be going for therapy. And I mean, I don't blame how society views it, because honestly, with culture and everything, that's how it's been viewed, if we even look like 10, 15 years back. But honestly, I remember my therapist had told me that people come in for therapy even if they're just like, they want to figure out their work management or time management or like general stress. And therapy is just a gateway for you to really understand yourself and have that safe space with someone who is allowing you to understand yourself better. And therapy has changed my life and my viewpoints and has made me so much more loving and kinder to myself. It has helped me to, it's helped me in all aspects of your life, because when it, and again, it's a struggle finding the right therapist, because a lot of therapists just assign a bunch of pills and they're like, yeah, it's going to fix you. Or like, you just have your antidepressants and you'll be fine. But honestly, our mind and body is so powerful that it has the power to heal us without medication needed. And of course, everyone has their own, baggage of traumas, and they need a certain amount of help when required. Perhaps, maybe meds are needed. But I personally believe that our mind and body is so powerful that we can heal ourselves without any medication involved. And you know how they say, studies say that, how does cancer and all these diseases come to be? They actually stem from unhealed trauma and thinking negatively about life and yourself. That it literally, I mean, obviously I don't know the details, all the science of all the science and what happens in our mind and body, but I do know for a fact that these negative cells then end up in our body, and then they multiply, and then these things actually lead to diseases like cancer, to diseases like diabetes. So that's something I would recommend everyone to study further. And that's why if you look at people who have a positive mindset, who have a positive viewpoint towards view towards life and themselves, actually are more healthier and live longer. And I mean, that speaks volumes. So that's just something that we should definitely explore more, because the more we shift our view towards life and ourselves, obviously with the help of spirituality and God, the more it will be easier to get through life, and the more beautiful life will become in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So you said you started therapy 4 years back and you've evolved a lot. So to end off this session, I have one last question for you. What would you do differently if you had to go back to high school again?
That's a great question. If you asked me this question a few years back, I would have probably said, oh my God, I would have changed this and that and this and that. But if it weren't for my mistakes, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have grown. And honestly, at one point in my life, I would look back and be like, oh my God, I wasn't a good person when I was in high school. I wasn't the nicest friend, or, like I could have been nicer to people. And when it comes to, for example, the rights of others, right? The right of others is obviously to be kind to them, compassionate, and to treat them with respect and everything. If that's something, if I had the opportunity to do more good, I would do that. I would go back to do more good and be kinder to people around me. And I think when people are unhappy with themselves and have insecurities, they project that on other people. And that is something that I struggled with in high school, because I was probably so unhappy with myself and I had a lot of insecurities that I would project that on those around me. And honestly, you could almost say that I was a lost soul, or not a good friend to be around. I mean, you could almost say that I was toxic. And that's okay, because that's how we learn and grow. But now as a 23-year-old, now when I look back at the different versions of Sukayna, I look at her with more compassion, understanding that, maybe she wasn't the greatest friend, or the greatest person back then, but she did whatever she did at that time that was best and what made sense to her, that protected her, that made her feel all like, oh my God, I'm so cool and I'm strong and like I can stay and do whatever I want. But it's about looking back at different versions of yourself with passion, which is not easy. Because then there are times when I was like, if I looked a few years back, I would almost hate my 18-year-old self because of like how she was. But it's like now it's looking at her with more compassion and love. And similarly, when you look at your past self and the mistakes, and when you look at yourself with compassion and love, you begin to love yourself unconditionally. And then it even impacts how you view people around you. So even if you come across challenging individuals, you then begin to empathize with them and understand that, they probably have their baggage of traumas and insecurities, and it's okay. And if there's one thing that we can take away from this entire session, even though this might not even be related to friendships, but love will is the one thing that will change this world. Love is the one thing that heals, whether it's ourselves or to those around us. The more we love in this world, the better. Obviously, with its boundaries and, the right kind of love. So our God is the most merciful and loving, right? And God loves us unconditionally. So why should we not show unconditional love to people regardless of their flaws and everything? It's very difficult, but the more we practice unconditional love towards ourselves and to others, we begin to grow. And it's not about that, oh, this is giving me an excuse to make every mistake or whatever, but it's just that to be kinder to ourselves when we make mistakes, or especially our past versions. So instead of giving you a whole gigantic TED talk right now on that one question that you asked me, let me just quickly wrap it up. But I would try to do the things. I would perhaps try to have been kinder to people around me and understood their perspectives better. And but at the same time, keeping that in mind, I wouldn't change anything. Because if I changed anything, not that I'm justifying the wrong that I did or the way I treated people, but I wouldn't have realized that, oh my God, what am I doing? This is not how we're supposed to treat other people. This is not how we're supposed to treat ourselves. And I would have never been able to grow. The beauty of life is that we are in this journey of growth, and that we make mistakes only to learn from them and better ourselves. So no, I would not change anything because I wouldn't be the woman I am today.
That is so beautiful. I absolutely love that. And the fact that you actually said that you would be kinder to people, and you actually know and you've reflected on it is a big thing, because many of us, including me, I've not reflected back on my high school version, even though it was just a year back. But yeah, I will definitely keep that in mind, and I love it. So
Yeah, I'm,
mm,
I'm, I'm glad. And honestly, reflection is something that we do for, our entire, like we're supposed to do our entire lives, because that is what allows us to grow, taking a step back and being like, hey, um, looking back at our life or our present moment and looking back at even our day. It is these very things that allow us to ponder and work towards change.
absolutely. So yeah, thank you so much for, first of all, this episode. I absolutely enjoyed it. And thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys had a nice time, and see you in the next episode.